Welcome to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Para Cave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. It is the Game Day Review podcast, and it is round 6 done and dusted, and it was heartbreak in the heat. The Eels, they headed to Darwin, look, full of hope after their win against the Dragons last week in Golden Point extra time, but left with heads down after a 50 points to 12 loss against the Raiders, a thumping by the Raiders, and it was 8 tries to 2, and look, absolutely missing over 40 tackles as well. It was a night where nothing seemed to click. Now, during this episode, I'll share the raw emotion of watching our team struggle. I watched the game at Parramatta Leagues Club with a friend of the show and also fellow podcaster Chris Ricketts. He is on the Put a Line Through 'em pod, so check that one out as well. So I watched the game with him, and it was a well below par performance. Look, a message to the faithful: we ride the highs, we ride the lows, because being a Parramatta fan means that we are showing up even when it hurts. But anyway, look, to the game, and as I said, it was 50 points to 12 up there in Darwin. The heat, the humidity, a crowd of 9,559 turned up to watch this. Now, by all reports of some people that were up there that I knew, there was a lot of Raiders fans up there, which was disappointing considering it was a Parramatta home game, but a lot of Raiders fans up there in the crowd, which has been a little bit of the call over the last few years, that the opposition team have had a lot more fans than Parramatta up there. So anyway, this was the last time that they played up in Darwin, after 12 years, I think it was, since 2014. And they actually, going into this game, as I said, full of hope. They had 2 wins against the Raiders up there in Darwin previously, so must have been third time lucky for the Raiders. But look, it's a very disappointing performance. I thought, watching it there with Chris at the Leagues Club, Parramatta Leagues Club, it was really disappointing. There was a good crowd in that Sterlo's bar there, and watching the game, and you could feel the disappointment. Look, when Dylan Brown scored his try, you thought, yeah, that was great to see, and you thought that Dylan Brown, he was his try was just so easy. He just basically ran through and a couple of steps, and he was over the line and put the ball down the score, and he thought, okay, this is a good sign. This is a good sign that Dylan Brown is going to be on this game. He's got that running game back, and look, it was 6-all after 15 minutes. Sean Russell converted that Dylan Brown try, and you thought, okay, yep, it's going okay. But you know, look, there was a few, I am going to say it, there was a few refereeing calls that probably bemused me a little bit. Were they the right calls? I don't know. They're always debatable. Talking to the Parramatta faithful at the Leagues Club during the game, they were bemused as well as to what these calls were. There was one in the first half. The penalty, the referee put the arm up favouring the Parramatta side, but then Canberra ended up with the ball. So I do not know what happened there. Obviously got the call wrong, and the pointed the arm the wrong way. But still very confusing to say the least. Look, the Dylan Brown penalty in the second half, that was... I was gobsmacked as to what that was about. Now, that was a really, really strange one for the penalty to be given against Dylan Brown. Now, a kick went up in the middle of the field, I think it was. Dylan was running through, had nothing but eyes for the football. did not know where the fullback was. They collided, and Dylan Brown was penalised for what was called a early tackle. I never knew you could tackle by running into somebody, but I would have thought that was just a collision, and look, I would have thought that would have been play on, but that wasn't the case the other night. Canberra got a penalty for that, so look, as I said, I find that a bit hard to believe, but hey, that was the ruling on the night. I don't know if that was correct or not, but certainly if you're running at pace with your eyes up, your head up, looking in the sky for the football, you've got no idea unless you got no idea where you are running unless you take your brief second off and look in front of you. But from my recollections of it, Dylan didn't take his eye off the sky. He was looking for the ball and just happened to run in. And I mean, obviously the fullback's going to be where the ball is as well. And Dylan's running towards the ball as well, up in the air. And look, it was just a collision. And I don't know how you could get penalised for that. But anyway, Dylan Brown got penalised for that. And it just seemed to be the way that Parramatta were getting the penalised throughout the night. The Xavier Savage penalty try as well. It was deemed that the Fox held him back a little bit, and that Xavier would have got to the ball first and would have actually scored that try had it have not been for that interference. Now, look, I find that one a ridiculous call, to be honest. I thought that Xavier was in front of the Fox anyway, and he was the first to the football. He just did not get it down, but it was ruled a penalty try. I think even Xavier Savage, he was absolutely gobsmacked as well. He couldn't believe that he scored a penalty try. So I thought it was, I thought that was just one of those calls that added to Parramatta's woes during the night. Josh Adokar himself, he actually scored a try as well in the game, which got back to 24-12 after Sean Russell made the conversion. That was 52 minutes into the game. That was in the second half. It was a good little piece of play by Parramatta. Sean Lane, he made a bit of a line break, and which contributed to the try. And then it was Sean to Sean, I think it was. So Sean Lane to Sean Russell, and Sean Russell to the Fox. And the Fox went over for a try and did a little bit of a celebratory dance after scoring the try, and why not, up in the top end as well. I think that might have been the cause of that. If he was going to score a try, he was going to do a little bit of a celebratory dance after that. A little bit of funny social media footage going around. Sean Russell comes behind him, but the Fox sort of brushes him a little bit and didn't give him a high five or anything. But a little bit of funny social media content going around about that one. But look, defence, that is a major problem at the Eels at the moment. Just missing so many tackles. Now, in my opinion, and I'll probably get cut down for this, but I thought the try-line defence, except for the first try to Joe Tarpany, that was reasonably pretty well. We kept the Raiders out pretty much every time that they went down to our end. The tries that the Raiders scored, they were off kicks close to our end. I think Hudson Young got one and Ethan Strange got a try off kicks. But it was our broken play defence and our kick chase defence as well. The Raiders scored a couple of tries that were from down in their end, and it just looked like Parramatta were just slipping off tackles. I know it's humid up there, and players get sweaty, and but it just looked like they were slipping straight off them at one stage there. KO Weeks at fullback there, he made a big run, and Dylan Brown and I think Riley Smith at the time might have been the other tackler that tried to tackle him, but just slipped off him and missed the tackles. But just a general broken play defence was probably non-existent, and the kick chase as well. It wasn't a kick chase in a straight line. It was a staggered line, and it made it easy for Canberra to get around. But so that is definitely something to work on this week going into the Tigers on Easter Monday. But as I said, I thought their try line defence was pretty good, and I thought they kept the Raiders out a couple of times there throughout the game, obviously except for that first try, but that was better defence than their broken play and their kick chase. Unfortunately, though, they couldn't wrap up the ball. Canberra, 14 offloads in the game. That was part of the Eels' big problems as well. They couldn't wrap up the ball in tackles, and Canberra were able to get the ball away. There was the flick pass from Joe Tarpany that led to a try. But yeah, just wrapping up the ball, that was probably an issue as well. If Parramatta can wrap up the ball, that would be obviously be a lot better, because we do know what second phase play can do to teams. It can cause all sorts of chaos, and that's what happened for Parramatta on Saturday night up there in Darwin. Look, when it came to defence, Tony Katoga, he didn't score. He made 42 tackles, which was a pretty impressive performance. He was second in the run meters as well for the forwards with 12 runs, 97 meters. Look, he has come under a little bit of criticism from fans. I think he's only about 8 games into his NRL career. He does have a mistake in him. I think that's just the way he plays. But you can't deny, 42 tackles and nearly 100 metres. You probably want a little bit more meterage out of that, but that probably just didn't come in the way of possession, and Parramatta only had 44% possession in the game, whereas the Raiders had 56%, and part of Parramatta's problem was their completion rate as well. It was only 66%. 24 out of 36 sets compared to the Raiders 88%, 39 out of 44 sets. So that's probably one of the reasons why the forwards run meters are down a little bit. Down a lot, I should say, is just the possession that Parramatta had throughout the game. The biggest run meter getter, you could say, was Bailey Simonson with 197 metres from 19 runs. Now, this was a great game from Bailey. He actually got the 3 points in the Paracave Podcast Eels Player of the Year award. So he got 3 points. Luca Moretti, he got 122 run metres, 11 runs. So he got 2 points as well. I just thought his quick play the balls as well was a good thing for Parramatta. It seemed to get on the front foot, and that's what you need when you are obviously getting tackled. You want to quick play the ball. You want to dominate that ruck, get a quick play the ball, and then that ball can get out to your speed men out wide. But Will Penasini, 168 metres from 16 runs. Isaiah Iongi and the Fox. Isaiah, 139 metres, and the Fox 133 metres, Josh Adokar. So you can tell that the backs have obviously got the most metres there, and that is from obviously kick returns and getting Parramatta out of danger from their own end. So that's why they've got the most metres there. But the forwards, I mentioned Luca, I mentioned Katoga. Dylan Walker, 7 runs, 81 metres. Sean Lane, 5 runs, 55 metres. Jermaine Hopgood, 4 runs, 49 metres. Also made 36 tackles. And Junior Paolo, 4 runs, 46 metres. Now, look, that is a little bit disappointing, to be honest, from those from Sean Lane, Jermaine, and Junior. Now, as I mentioned, it was due to the fact of not a lot of possession that Parramatta had as well, but you would try to expect your captain and front rower to get more runs in the game. Sean Lane, I guess, has been criticised as well over the last few weeks. He did have one of his better games against the Dragons last week. I think a change needs to be made in that back row. I don't think it's working with Sean Lane. Now, look, he is a first-grade footballer. I'm not a first-grade footballer. So just every time I looked up watching the game and the cameras went to a wide view, I just saw Sean with his hands on his hips. Now, I know it's humid up in Darwin and hot and humid up there, but this isn't just a Darwin thing. I honestly, I'm not criticising Sean because he's a first-grade footballer. That's something that I could never do and have never done, but I just don't know what is going on with Sean Lane. There was a point there where a kick went into the Canberra in-goal, and it looked like Sean was going to grab it and score a try, which could have got Parramatta back into the game, but unfortunately it must have just happened so quickly where he was unable to grab it. You know how sometimes you see those plays where players are just lucky enough to be in that position at the right time and you can just get the ball and score? Well, that was one of those times, I thought, and unfortunately just couldn't get the ball. But look, I think it's time for a change against the Tigers. I would give Kelma Tuilagi another crack at second row. Didn't have the best of games against the Melbourne Storm in round one. I'd give him another shot back in that one. I was looking forward to him pre-season, seeing how he would go in that back row position. Unfortunately, as I said, he didn't have that cracking of a game against the Storm, one that he would rather forget, and we haven't seen him in first grade since. I would probably give him promotion into first grade. Jermaine Hopgood is an interesting one. I didn't really hear too much of his name in the commentary. He copped a nasty knock on the nose there, where his nose was bleeding on the bridge of his nose, I think it was. At one point, and he was playing hooker at one stage as well, with Riley Smith again being on the bench for Parramatta at the start of the game, which I thought in hindsight was probably a good thing. I did say pre-game that I thought that Riley Smith and Tom Starling, the two small men for the Eels and the Raiders, would probably be key components in this side, especially being in the heat up in Darwin. Those two did come together at one stage, and Tom Starling was running the ball and ripped off Riley's headgear and just threw it away. And I think from that point there, Riley did the whole game without a headgear, much to the annoyance of some people who know Riley as a headgear wearer. So it was certainly different, other than knowing the number. If you didn't see his number on the back, then you couldn't identify him quickly without the headgear. But he made 38 tackles, which is something that he generally does every game. Jermaine Hopgood did make 36 tackles. We know that Jermaine does do tackling is part of his game as well, but I just thought that he had a quiet game to his standards. I think obviously running less, playing hooker in those first 20 minutes of the game, so I think obviously running less as well. Joe Hoffahengawi, 32 tackles, had a bit of a verbal with Joe Tarpany at one stage there, which was good to see. I think Bailey Simonson as well. He was the player of the match from an Eels perspective, I thought anyway, and a few others thought as well. As I said, 197 run meters, 19 runs, five line breaks as well. absolutely ridiculous on a comeback after such a lengthy stint out with a knee injury. Has played a couple of New South Wales Cup games leading up to this one, but I just thought he was the player of the game from an Eels perspective. 81 post contact meters and 5 tackle breaks as well. So I thought it was I think he'll be included in the side next or for this week against the Tigers. I think he'll probably play, I'm going to say, wing as well again, with Sean Russell in the centres, with Zach Lomax obviously still out injured as well. So well done on the comeback to first grade. Bailey played really, really well. Look, to a few stats of the game. As I said, it was 8 tries to 2. It was 44% possession to the Eels, 56% to the Raiders. Completion rate 66% Eels, 88% Raiders. Canberra, they ran for about 600 more metres than Parramatta. Line breaks, 8 to Canberra, 3 to Parramatta. Offloads, 14 to Canberra, 10 to Parramatta. The two biggest stats that really hurt Parramatta on the weekend were the missed tackles, 45 to Parramatta, 21 to Canberra, and the other stat that really hurt them as well was the errors, 16 to Parramatta, 8 to Canberra. You just can't have that high number of stats in a game of rugby league if you want to win it. So, look, it was a disappointing game, and look, a couple of people have asked me, was that 50-point... Parramatta have had 2 50-point games this season so far. They've got the worst defence in the league. They're over 100 points in for and against. In this competition, they have the second lowest attacking record, with 79 points. The Newcastle Knights only have 46 points for. Parramatta 79 points for, the second lowest in the competition, and 202 points against, the highest in the league, which leaves them at minus 123 on for and against. So that is very concerning. 2 50-point games in 6 weeks. Now, people have asked me which one is worse, the Melbourne Storm one or the Canberra one. And look, I've responded back and told them that I think that the Canberra one was worse than the Melbourne Storm one. The Melbourne Storm one was pretty bad, but look, not a lot of people gave us hope down in Melbourne, especially at Amy Park, their first home game of the year. A lot of people gave us no hope to get the victory down there. We didn't think that was going to be that bad. 56-12, I think the final score was, and Parramatta fans didn't think it was going to be that bad. They did score some quick tries on that occasion, and I think it was something like 40-0 or something like that, 40-4 or something at half time. I can't even remember. I've tried to put that game out of my mind. But I think this one was actually worse than that one. I think just because of the missed tackles and the ease of the tries being scored by the Raiders. Look, there was a couple from kicks, and you're always going to have a couple of tries by kicks, but just the missed tackles, it was pretty concerning there. Look, one thing that I haven't really delved into, and look, it's probably going to be some real crazy little thing, but I did actually mention to someone at the Leagues Club during the game as well, why is it that over the last few years that the Parramatta jerseys, they've always looked soaked and absolutely drenching in sweat? I know it's humid up there, but I looked at the Raiders jerseys the other night, of the Raiders players, and they're playing in the same conditions, but it didn't look as drenched as the Parramatta side. Maybe it was the colour, maybe it was the lime green, I don't know, but Parramatta were playing in their home strip, the predominantly blue jumper, so I don't know. But yeah, it just got me thinking about the jerseys that Parramatta have been playing in up there in Darwin. Is it the material that they're made out of? Are they the same material as other teams' jerseys? I don't know, but every year they seem drenched, and I understand it is hot and humid up in Darwin. Maybe it's just the colour of the jerseys, I don't know. But that's just one stupid little thing that I thought about the other night, and actually did mention to somebody, and they agreed with me. They said, yeah, it's strange how the Canberra jerseys don't look as drenched as the Parramatta jerseys. But look, where to from here, I don't know. Parramatta play the West Tigers at CommBank Stadium, 4 p.m. Monday, the Easter Monday, the 21st of April. It is a West Tigers home game. Now, they had a win against Newcastle, 20 points to 4 last week up there in Newcastle. They sit in 7th spot on the ladder at the moment. Parramatta, they find themselves, unfortunately, down the bottom of the ladder still. The Panthers just ahead of them on same points, but massive for and against difference. So they still find themselves down the bottom of the ladder, unfortunately, on 2 points. Easter Monday games, the Tigers, look, there will be a preview of this game coming out later on in the week, but the Tigers, they seem to, for some reason, they get up for this game, the Easter Monday game. I don't know what it is, whether it's a Parramatta home game or whether it's a Tigers home game. They just seem to get up for that Easter Monday game. I don't know whether it's because it's a standalone game on a Monday. Maybe it's one of those games like the Roosters and Dragons on Anzac Day. Or, yeah, maybe it's just like that sort of a game where the Tigers, they just want to win that game on Easter Monday. I don't know. I just think that for some reason there was the Jackson Hastings field goal a couple of years ago. Last season, I think they got the win as well with Lachlan Galvin. I think he got sin bin, his first ever sin binning in that game, but then they went on to win that game as well. Parramatta, I think, were playing in the 2001 Heritage Strip. I think it was. They got beat that day. So, look, the Tigers, they'll be up for this game, but there'll be more on that in the game day preview podcast, which will come out later on in the week. Look, as a Parramatta fan, you have your frustrations. It is not the start of the year that we as fans wanted or expected. We thought we would have won a few more games than this and be a bit higher on the ladder. It hasn't happened. Look, obviously Mitchell Moses has been out, and that is a big thing. Can he solve all the problems? No, he can't. He will definitely solve the kicking game problem, but he can't solve all the problems. He will solve a little bit of the attack problems, but not all the problems. So definitely him being out and Zach Lomax being out at the same time as well, two of your best players, it does make it difficult. But look, let's hope they get back to Parramatta. As I said, it won't be a home game for them. It will be an away game, but it is still Parramatta's home. Paradise is ours. It's nobody else's, despite what the other clubs say. So Paradise is ours. Let's make it our home game. Let's hope we get a big crowd there, big Parramatta Eels contingent out there, out in Parramatta on Easter Monday. And look, it is disappointing. It is frustrating. I do remember Jason Riles at the start of the year saying, look, this is not a quick fix. This will take time. and we have to bear with him and the rest of the team. There's a lot of changes in this side, a lot of new players, and look, it is frustrating. We do see glimpses at times, but then we see more bad things happen at the other times. So, look, stick with it. Stick with your team, Parramatta fans. It will come good. I don't know when. I don't know how, but it will come good. And Parramatta will win more games this season. And hopefully the Game Review podcast next week will be much more happier. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to this, the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. See you next time.